So I've got my Cambria design loaded into Showit 5. And as you can see, it's very flowery and feminine, and it's beautifully designed, but it doesn't reflect a brand that would reflect me. And so I'm going to change it up. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to load in my own photos. So there's a couple ways to get to the media library. I can either click the Add Media button at the bottom center of the screen, or I can go to the Site tab at the top left, and I can click on Media Library. So here's my media library. I'm going to add a new folder for this Launch Lab demo, just so I can keep that nice and clean. I'm going to click on that. It's empty right now because I don't have anything in there. And I'm going to choose the images that I have chosen for this demo. Where'd my screen go? I'm going to grab all these photos, and I'm just going to drag them right into the library. As you can see at the top left, you'll see the status. It's uploading 11 images. And we'll see each one come in here. Real quick, the kind of optimum resolution and size to bring in your images at, we would recommend bring them in at 3,500 pixels wide. We have a really fancy media server that resizes and optimizes all these images. So you upload one image, and we serve them up and scale them and optimize them appropriately based on how it is defined in your design. And so if you just upload a good, clean image, then we'll take care of the rest. So here's my images. Now I'm ready to start putting these into my design. So I'm just going to close this right here. Now, when we talk about images in Showit 5, there are really three basic ways that images are handled in Showit 5. There are standard images that are on the page and kind of sitting by themselves. We'll call those inline images. We also have background images, and we also have galleries. And so each one of those types of ways of displaying images have their own little unique nuances about them, and so I'll step you through each one of those things. The inline images are the easiest to understand, and so this picture here of this woman doesn't look much like me, and so I'm going to swap that out with a picture that is me. So if I just click on that image, up at the top right here in the Properties panel, in the Image tab, there's a thumbnail of that image. And if I click that image, it's going to open up my library, and I can choose a picture of myself, and it'll automatically get swapped in there. And you'll also see in my mobile view over here on the left, the same image got swapped in. Now, I'll stop here just to kind of give you a broad overview of how our side-by-side mobile and desktop designer works. The way that Showit 5 is built is it keeps your content synced, but it allows you to create unique styling for that content. So what do I mean by content and styling? Content would be an image or text. So the image that I place here is going to be the same on mobile and desktop. The text that I have between mobile and desktop is going to be the same, but I can style each differently. So for example, let me give you a quick example here on my desktop layout here. As you can see initially, this image is pushed to the left, and whereas on my mobile, the image is above the text. And so I can even do quite a bit more to where really I can drag and drop this and scale it and do whatever I want to it. And it doesn't do anything to my mobile. So this allows you to create unique experiences for mobile and desktop, which is really powerful, especially when it comes to understanding that people browse things differently on their phone than they do on their desktop. So let's talk about text real quick. I'm going to scroll up here to my header canvas. And as you can see, this is still titled Cambria. And I'm going to change that my name. And as you can see, when I changed it here on desktop, the text got changed here on mobile as well. If I go scroll down here to my paragraph text down here, now in my own opinion, I'd kind of like to have this paragraph on desktop be a little bit bigger and easier to read. So when I click on that, I get my text formatting options over on the right, and I'm going to bump this up from 13, let's say, to 16. Okay, and then we see our text size increase. I'm going to move this around a little bit to make it accommodate the other elements that are currently in there. And we also see that on mobile, it didn't change. So I have complete control over the styling, again, of these elements without changing the content of it. Now, what if I wanted to change the paragraph text styling on all of my paragraphs throughout my page? I could go to each one of those paragraphs individually and do what I just did and change the text size from 13 to 16. But that would take a long time depending on how many pages you have. So we have some great global design settings that will help make this way more easy for you, especially when starting with a new design. So I'm going to undo this change for this text box here, just to illustrate that. So over on the left, under the Site tab, I've got Design Settings. And when I open this up, you see a color palette with numbers tagged onto each one of them. And I've got kind of default text styling for mobile and for desktop. Now, what will happen here is I've got unique settings for each one of these things. If you click on the little 3 dots next to them. So as you can see, there's unique settings. There's some similar settings too, but there's unique ones. So on my mobile, this design comes with Nixie 1 normal as the title text with a size of 20, line height of 1.2. On my desktop, it's the same font, but it's a bigger size. And so by default, I'm thinking, okay, desktop is going to be bigger, mobile is going to be smaller. If I go down to my paragraph on both of these, we can see again, the default size for mobile is 12 and the default size for desktop is 13. If I change this here up to 16 and hit save, then we'll see the same thing happened globally to what I just did to this one particular text box. And so really quickly, I can start to make global changes to the whole site without having to go into each individual element. Let me show you how this may be even more easy to see if I change colors. So we have a really cool color picker in Showit 5 that I love, and it has saved me so much time. If I click on this title right here that says About Cambria, and I'm going to just change this real quick to About Us, just to unbrand it from Cambria. If I go to my settings over here on the right, then I can see my color swatch. And if I click on that, then I see a color palette here, as well as a full color picker like in Photoshop, and you can paste in a hex value if you know specific colors. The power that we have here in Showit is in these color swatches. And so notice each one has a number associated with them. This particular text element is using this pink color, which is swatch number 2. And if I scroll down and check these other elements that have the same color, they also have that same color swatch. So rather, if I want to change this pink to something different, rather than going into every single element that's pink, I can go into these design settings again over on the top left under the Site tab. And I can change this color swatch here. So I can just click on this pink color here, and I can paste in, or I can choose a different color. So I already have a color picked for this, so I'm going to copy this hex value and paste it in to save a little bit of time. So now I have it changed to a blue color. When I hit OK and then hit save, all of a sudden, all of my pink has turned to blue. So really quickly, I've changed the feel of the site just simply by changing one color. I'm going to go change one other color because there's this kind of peachy color that's still not really me. I'm going to copy another color here. And I'm going to change this peachy color, kind of a yellowish greenish. Save. And now all that peach is turned to a greenish color. Okay. Now we still have fonts to deal with because these fonts are still a little bit more feminine than what would reflect who I want to portray myself to be. And I have chosen some fonts that I want to push out into this. So in my design settings, if I go back in there again, if I open up the title styling on mobile and I choose the font dropdown, then you can see I've got a few fonts to choose from here. None of these are ones that I want, and so I'm going to add some new fonts from Google. So if I click on the Fonts tab inside the Design Settings panel, you can see you've got some options here for adding new fonts. Now, Google has over 800 free fonts to choose from. Rather than putting all 800 of those in every one of our font dropdowns, we decided to allow you to choose specific Google fonts that you want to populate your font menus so that you don't have to dig through 800 fonts every time you want to change a font. So the fonts that I've chosen that I want to be part of my brand are Oswald. So if I choose Oswald from this drop-down of 800 fonts, you'll see a preview for it over here on the right. And that's the one that I want. And I'm going to click this blue button that says Add Google Font. Then all of a sudden you see Oswald Normal down here at the bottom of my font list. Okay, I'm going to add a couple more. I'm going to add one called Permanent Marker. A preview here, click Add Google Font. It gets added. And I'm going to add one more called Montserrat. I think that's how you pronounce it, but it's my best guess. Again, you see a preview of it. If I didn't want Montserrat, then I could just choose a different font, and that would get moved out of the way without getting added. But I'm going to add it because that's the one I want. Now I have the 3 new fonts that are part of my brand added to the font list. I hit save to save those fonts. You go back into my design settings and go to the Site Style tab. And now I'm going to put these fonts into my default text styling. I'm going to click the 3 dots next to each one of these styles. For my title, I am going to use Oswald. And I'm going to do that on both of these for mobile and desktop. Close these up. For my heading, I'm going to use, excuse me, Permanent Marker. Close those. And for subheading and paragraph, I'm going to use Montserrat. Okay, so all of a sudden, I've changed all the fonts in my default text styling. Now when I hit save, you can see all those pushed out into my entire page. So real quickly, simply by changing global color swatch values and changing the fonts, it has a completely different feel to it. Now we've got a few little snafus here because these fonts are thicker than the ones that were originally in the design. So I can do things to change that. I can increase the size on these text boxes to accommodate them. I could move things around if I want. We can do those things later. So I still have some spots here that obviously not all these are my pictures. And so, and which also is going to contribute to still part of the feminine quality of this design. And so as soon as I add in my own pictures, it's really going to continue to change what's going on here. Now let's talk about background images. We already talked about inline images, how you can replace those. You can also, real quick, I'll go back. If you just want to add a new image that's not a part of the existing design, all you have to do is click into the canvas that you want, click the media library button, which is part of the add elements button set at the bottom center. It's going to open your media library, and all you have to do is click on the image that you want, select it, click add to page, and it'll get added to your canvas here. Okay, I'm going to delete that for now, but I just wanted to show you real quick how you can add a new image. Background images. So in this section here, we have a background image for this canvas. I'll get to canvases in a little bit. In this section here, we have a background image. Actually, no, let me talk about what a canvas is. So if you haven't noticed already, there are sections of our page that that make up the page. We call these canvases. They are sections of the page that are stacked on top of each other, and they can be managed individually. Canvases are the building blocks of pages in Showit. And with canvases, you can do all kinds of cool stuff. You can resize, you can reorder them, you can assign unique backgrounds, colors, and videos to each one of those canvases uniquely, independently, and you can also share canvases between pages. So in this case, I've got my canvas here selected, which if we go over to the page tab on the left, so our layer panel over here is divided up into canvases. Right now I have my philosophy canvas selected. And when I'm clicking in here and nothing's being selected on this image because this image is a background image for this canvas. So if I want to change this, I would go over to the right properties panel, click on canvas background, and I see a thumbnail of the image that's there. Now I want to change this. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to choose a different image to put in there. Wait for it to load. There we go. Now, if I look at it on mobile, this is one of the unique things about background images compared to inline images. Mobile and desktop browsers and devices have some unique qualities to them. And when it comes to background images, it's something that was different enough that we wanted these two things to be independent compared to inline images that we wanted them to stay the same. I'll give you a quick example. On a desktop screen, most canvases are going to have a widescreen aspect ratio. They're going to be panoramic. It's going to be shorter and wider than a mobile that is typically going to be taller and thinner. And that really has to do with the default aspect ratio of how people browse on their phones. They browse vertically, and on a desktop, their monitors are a widescreen aspect ratio. So as you can see here, my background image for this canvas on desktop is different than on mobile. Over in the properties panel over here, you can see that we have a tab for desktop and for mobile, and you can toggle between those. See what changes need to be made to make those things unique. So for our purposes, I'm just going to choose the same image and choose this car image. There we go. So That's how you change a background image. Let me show you some of the really cool features with background images. If I preview this, up at my top right, I've got a preview and a publish button. I'm just going to preview. It's going to open an overlay window. It's going to load up the site that I've been working on. If I scroll here, we can see that new background image I put in. Now, right now, this background image scrolls with the page. But what if I want this to scroll differently or at a different speed than what the page is scrolling at? We can do that really easily. So if we go to our Canvas background property panel on the right and look at the scroll field, right now it's set to scroll with page. But I have two other options. I have parallax, and I'll show you what that looks like. I just changed it to parallax. I'm going to hit preview again. Now when I scroll, the background is moving at a slower speed than the rest of my page, which just gives it some depth to it. Just has a cool effect. I'll show you one other example. If I go back to my Canvas background settings, change parallax to fixed, and we preview. Now that background image doesn't move at all when I scroll. It stays stationary while the rest of the page scrolls over it. So again, it gives you a lot of creative freedom to add some depth to your site, add some interactivity, and just make it a little bit different than the textbook way of the way that things scroll and behave on your site. So you can get really creative with that. It's some cool stuff. Now let me tell you real quick, kind of offer some caveats for mobile. So on mobile devices are getting better and better, but there are a lot of mobile devices that still treat things differently when you're scrolling. So we don't have parallax available for mobile sites or for the mobile view because it's a poor experience on older phones. And for the time being, we're going to yield to that because we don't want it to be a poor experience for anyone. And so we have opted to not include parallax on mobile. Probably in a couple years, once everything catches up, then we'll get there. But at this time, what would happen is if we set it to parallax on mobile, your users would be scrolling. The images would be scrolling with the page until the page was done scrolling. Then it would trigger the repositioning of that background image, and it just is really choppy and just not a good experience. So we have opted to keep parallax out of mobile for now, just so that you don't get confused and want to have parallax on mobile. Just know it's not available right now. All right, let's jump to the third image option that we talked about. So we talked about inline images. We just went through background images. Now let's talk about galleries. So in my intro canvas up at the top here, here's another cool trick real quick. If you go to your layers panel over on the left and click on one of the canvases, then it'll scroll it to you on both views. Nice handy trick. So if I click on this flower image, and around this is not a background image. This is a gallery. And the way I know that is because over in the right properties panel, I see gallery settings and gallery images. So if I click on gallery images at the top right, then I see a list of 3 images in there. If I preview this, then I'll show you how it behaves. So if we give this a second, it's going to cycle through these 3 images. Okay, so these the cycling settings are set in gallery settings here on the right. So it's set to auto advance every 3 seconds and to fade for a half a second. Now, if I want to change the images in here, then I click on Manage Images. And I'm going to toss in a few other images here. I'm going to select these 3 right here. Now, there's a blue pulsing button right here. This is the key to getting these into your gallery. I see my current list over on the right, and I've got 3 selected over here. If I click this blue arrow, it's going to add it to the bottom of my list. And I can delete these other ones by selecting and then clicking the delete button at the bottom of that panel. I can also reorder these by clicking and dragging. Super simple to get the ones that you want at the front. Okay, I'm going to add one more here. I'm going to add this beach one. Select it, click the blue arrow, and I'm going to have this be my first one in the list. Okay, hit save down at the bottom right, and it'll get added to your gallery. So if I preview it, there we go, there's my new images. All right, so again, the more changes we make, the more this site changes, the look changes. I'm going to make some little tweaks here to my header logo here. So I don't have a official logo, but I'm just using the similar typefaces for my brand. I'd like for these guys to be all caps. So I'm going to change my lettercase to uppercase. And on desktop, I'm going to do the same thing for mobile. And these things are misaligned a little bit, and so I'm going to quickly, I can click and then shift click to select both of those. Then I get my align tools over here on the right, and I can center them, and I can center both of them to the stage. Now I've got my logo centered. Now, I don't know if you can see it on screen here, but I've got kind of a faint watercolor, pinkish, peachish background image on this canvas that, again, doesn't reflect who I am. And so I'm going to add a different one. So if I go to my background, canvas background settings here, I see the image of that watercolor graphic. And I'm going to choose this wood texture here as my header. Now that gets pulled in. Now I lost my logo a little bit. There's not enough contrast between that and the wood. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change. So I've got my wood background image. Now I'm going to change the color to be a darker color. I'm going to use this dark gray over here. And I'm going to change the opacity of this image to be 50%. So more of that gray shows through. I'm going to move these guys up a little bit. And I'm going to change the color of this title to white. Okay, so all of a sudden, real quickly, I have the feel of the site is completely different than what we started with. It feels a lot more like me. I feel more comfortable with this design as it being a representation of who I am and what I want my business to be. So we're getting there, and not a lot of time. We're almost there. Now, if we preview this, it's looking good, right? Got my galleries here. We got my branded wood texture and my logo and fonts that I want. My navigation, if I want to check out my galleries, I can click on the galleries button here, and it automatically scrolls me to my galleries. Now, I lost my navigation up here, and what if I wanted to click to my About section, or I wanted to allow my users to click around and not have to scroll back to the top to know where the contact canvas is? So there are ways to do that. So if I look at my navigation canvas here, I've got my buttons, and each one of these buttons has click actions on them or links applied to them. Over on the right, we see our click actions property panel. And this particular button that's labeled galleries is linked to a canvas. And the canvas that is linked to is called galleries. Now, if we look over on the left in our layer panel, there's a canvas called galleries. And so when this galleries link is clicked, it's going to automatically scroll the user to that section, to that canvas on the page. So I want this canvas to always be visible. So we have options for doing that. If you click on the canvas properties panel on the top right, we can see that we have some settings here. And one of these settings is called sticky. Right now it's set to none, so it's going to scroll with the page. I can have it set to top, which would always have it stuck to the top of the window, or I can have it set to top on scroll. That's what I'm going to choose here. Well, real quick, no, I'm going to do this. We're going to do top on scroll. Okay, I'm going to hit preview. Now when I scroll, I'll do this slowly. Boom, it's stuck there. But, uh-oh, now I've just lost it because this other canvas is on top of it. There's a way to fix that. So when you choose for a canvas to be sticky, you want to make sure that it is going to sit above all the other canvases so that it's visible, because there's kind of an order for the way that things stack on the page. So we have a stacking order value up here in the canvas settings. Right now it's set to 0, which is set to default. The analogy that I've used to kind of explain how the default stacking order works, if you think about being at the bottom of a staircase and you're looking up, and the top stair is actually the farthest away from you, and the bottom stair is closest to you. If one of your kids walks up to the halfway up the stairs, then they're going to be blocking all the stairs that are technically above them. And so that's how the stacking order works. So that the farther it gets down on the page, the closer it gets to you. And it's going to overlay anything that would be above it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change my stacking order to 1. And now I'm going to preview. Now when I scroll, boom, it's stuck, and now everything is underneath it. So I can scroll around here. It takes my visitors to all the different sections of my site and just gives a nice experience of this smooth scrolling. Okay, let's move on to contact forms. Okay, contact forms are typically, for photographers, going to be like the main conversion or way to know that people who are visiting your site, way to get them to become your clients if they contact you. So I'm going to go to my contact canvas. And right here, when I scroll over this, you see these diagonal lines. Now this indicates that this particular canvas is a site canvas. And a site canvas is a canvas that it can be shared across multiple pages. And so if you have, so that this particular site is a long scrolling page that may only have 1 page in it. But if you have a page, or if you have a site that has, let's say, 5 pages in it, you've got your home page, your about page, portfolio, and maybe 2 others, whatever they are, there are going to be certain canvases that you want to be the same on all 5 of those pages. Headers and footers are great examples of that. And in order for those, let's say you have 10 or 20 pages, if you make a change to your header on one of those pages, you want that change to be pushed out to all of your pages, right? So here's an example of how this works. So this contact canvas is a site canvas. And so if I want to edit it, I click on the blue button that says Edit Contact, and all of a sudden I see this by itself. I'm going to fix this little issue that happened when I changed the font. Do that for mobile and desktop. Now, when I make this change, I'll show you real quick. I'm going to jump back into my home page, scroll down to my contact canvas, and you can see that quick text change that I made. Now, this change is always also going to be reflected on my other blog templates. We'll get into blog templates in a little bit. Okay, same change. Now, on this contact canvas, I'm going to go back in and edit it. This contact canvas takes advantage of what we call canvas views. And canvas views are sections within a canvas that are displayed independently of each other. And a contact form is a great example of how this works. So if we go over to our layer panel on the left, you see our regular layers. We've got some little hairlines up there, and we've got our title, and we've got a little border line down here. Then we see in our layer panel, we've got a folder. And in that folder, we've got our form fields for our contact form. There's another folder down below that. And if we click on that, it changes the content of this canvas. And we see a thank you message for filling out the form. And so what happens here is when you've got your form all filled out and you click send, there's a click action on this send button that this is what it's set to. It's set to link to a canvas. We want the canvas to be this canvas. And we want the canvas view to advance to the next one. We also, because this is a contact form, there's a checkbox here to say submit contact form. So that's actually what will initiate the transfer of the data from your form to your email address. So now when I click the send button, it's going to submit the form and process that data. It's also going to transition the canvas view to the thank you message. And so we can try that real quick. I'm going to click on contact. I'm going to fill out my name. I'm going to hit send. And then we get this nice, elegant thank you message after I submitted the contact form. Now, the cool thing with contact forms within Showit is that not only do you get an email with that message inside of it, you can also configure it to send you a text message whenever a contact message comes in. And so really quickly, rather than having to check your email all the time, we all get texts all the time, and we typically respond to those and pay attention to those quicker than we do email addresses. And so you can immediately call back that client and just be very responsive when those contact messages come in. So with these canvas views, I'll show you another example of that on our homepage. In the About Us section, we've got a brief description and then a More button. And what happens when you click this More button is, if we look in our layers, there's two views. There's two canvas views. The first view is this text with this button. The second view is another section in our About section. I'm going to move this up a little bit since it got unformatted with our text changes. So you can really create as many canvas views as you want. Canvas views are great for testimonials. If you have 5 or 10 quotes from your clients that you want to display elegantly, and you want your users to be able to cycle through those and read those, or even cycle through them automatically. It's great for About sections when you're talking about, let's say, your 10 favorite things, which really helps to add some good personality of like who you are and helping your potential clients get to know you before they actually meet you in person. And so there's a lot of great fun things you can do with canvas views. Now, let's say, for example, that this contact canvas came bundled with this site design. Let's say for whatever reason that I didn't really care for this contact form and I didn't want to take the time to rebuild something from scratch. I can add a different canvas from a different site design from whatever page you want on that. Let me show you how to do that. So from my layer panel over on the top left, I've got my page selected up here. I'm going to click the 3-dot context menu button, and I'm going to say add new canvas. So what this does is it brings up a browser to let you browse through the sites that are available for you to choose from. I've got my sites, so I've got a few different sites in here that that I've worked on my own, and I've got individual canvases that I can choose from here. I can even browse the Showit library, and so here's a list of all the free site designs that are preloaded within Showit 5. So I'm going to choose, let's see, the Alive and Free site by Go Live HQ. On the home page, there's a really nice contact canvas. And so I just drill down, I choose the site, I choose the page, and now I'm going to choose the canvas that I want. Okay. This is my favorite part. Okay, so I like the layout of this, but these text fields don't match my own branding that I've defined on my new site, but I can toggle between how I want this to be imported. So down at the bottom below this preview, I've got these two buttons. By default, it is displaying using the original design that the ladies at Go Live designed this in. But I can also toggle this to say apply my fonts and colors. So it's going to take the design settings that I already defined in my design settings, and it's going to apply it here to this layout. And so all of a sudden it's pulled in my own fonts and my own colors. So really quickly, without having to do anything other than click a button, it's already branded to me. So if I click add, I can see that it gets added to the bottom of my page. And I'm going to put this where the old contact canvas is. So I'm going to grab this from the layer menu. I'm going to drag it up above my old contact canvas. When I click that, all of a sudden I've got that in my page. And so real quickly, you can piece together a site really from canvases from all kinds of different sites. So real quickly, you are able to add sections. You really have a lot of freedom to do all this stuff. And then I can just go in, and I'm not locked into this layout. I can make this work a little bit better with my own fonts and sizes. I can change this background to be a little bit lighter if I need to make these other text fields stand out a little bit better. I'll leave it as is for right now, but you have complete control over it. Okay, we're going to wrap up real quick, but before we do, let me talk to you about blogs. So if you have ever worked with WordPress, you know that it's a great blogging platform, but it can be difficult to change anything on the design, and that can be really frustrating unless you are a developer or if you have just hacked your way through CSS hacks and adding plugins and all kinds of stuff, or even having to hire a developer to do it for you. It can be really frustrating because you can't just make a simple change yourself. So we've seen that problem, and so we have built in a WordPress theme designer into Showit 5, and all that, it works just like it does building out your regular Showit 5 pages. So over on the left in the site panel, under my site tab, I've got my pages. There's only one. There's my home page, but then below that I have my blog templates, and there's two in there. One called blog and one called single post. So if I go to blog and I scroll up to my header, then I can see that this has taken all the design changes that I've made on my homepage and pushed out the colors and fonts that I want. And here's an example of how a blog template is laid out. So rather than text being exactly the way that you type it in on a page, on WordPress, there are placeholders. And so as you can see here, there is a blog post title on your published blog. It's not going to say blog post title, obviously. It's going to take the actual text from your title field that you put in WordPress, and it's going to drop it into this section here. Same thing for post date, category links, and post content. Now, all of the free site designs and premium site designs that are in our design market, they all come preloaded with blog designs. So out of the box, they're going to look great. But if you wanted to change anything, you can do that. You said, you know what, I want this image to be just a little bit wider. I can do that. If I wanted this post title to be a little bit smaller or just even in a completely different place, I can do that. It's completely drag and drop, just like the regular Showit builder is. Now, we do offer free blog migration. And so whether you're on Squarespace or whether you're on WordPress or even Blogger, our support pros can handle getting all of your content, all of your blog content over into our own system. And as soon as you make a change in your blog templates, all you have to do is hit publish after it's all hooked up, click publish, and it pushes all those design changes to your WordPress blog. And it's really simple. And you just continue to blog. You create your WordPress blogs inside the WordPress admin as usual. And so it's a great system to allow you to do things quickly and efficiently, and gives you complete creative freedom over everything. Okay, that was a lot of stuff all at once, and there's a lot more in Showit 5, and we'll save that for another webinar. But hopefully this gives you the confidence to be able to go in and make the changes that you want to really make your website reflect who you are and who your business is. There are 3 resources that we would highly recommend to help you continue to get going. We have our help docs and tutorial videos at help.showit.co, so check those out. We also have our Facebook groups. We've got our Showiteers group for our Showit users, as well as a Showit 5 user group that's open to everyone who is getting started with Showit. And it's a way to allow the community to help encourage each other and to answer some of the questions, the common questions that everyone seems to have. So get in there, get plugged in. We also have our messaging app within Showit 5. So at the bottom right section of the app, there's a little messaging icon, and you can always send a message to our support pros. They're always happy to help. They're great guys, and they'll get your questions answered. So thanks again for joining us. Hope you have a great time designing in Showit. I can't wait to see what you create. And so long from Arizona. Have a great day.